feel out there?
Well, pretty good. I'm not gonna lie. Just trying not to think of the injury, the cold. Just trying to go out there and set the tone.
So would you say you were playing on adrenaline?
Yeah, I mean it's playoffs. When you start the game in the playoffs, it's a different thing, and there's a lot of adrenaline, a lot of emotion. So you just keep going.
Welcome to Inside the Mavs, presented by Aura. My name is Kevin Gray, Dallas Mavericks pre- and post-game host on the Dallas Mavericks Radio Network. Appreciate you joining me here for the latest episode of Inside the Mavs. If you're watching this on my YouTube channel at Kevin Gray Sports, make sure you like and comment on the video. And if you're listening to the podcast, give it a 5-star rating and write a review for it while you're there. You can find it on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and iHeartRadio, wherever you get your podcasts for free. And you can find me on Twitter at Kevin Gray Sports. It was the beatdown in Tinseltown in Game 5 between the Mavericks and the Clippers as the Mavericks take a 3-2 series lead after a 30-point thrashing of James Harden, Paul George, and the Los Angeles Clippers in Game 5, 123-93. Luka Dončić with 35 points in the victory. Derrick Jones Jr. with his 4th straight game in double figures. Maxi Kleber, who had a massive game, especially in the second quarter, knocking down 4 3-pointers, helped the Mavericks get a 30-point win to set up a closeout game on Friday night at the American Airlines Center, where the Mavericks will have an opportunity to move on to the Western Conference semifinals to take on the Oklahoma City Thunder. A stunning result in Game 5 as the Mavericks were able to put it on the Clippers and be able to take control of the game in the second quarter. As we know, teams that win Game 5 in a best-of-7 series go on to win that series nearly 82% of the time. So the Mavericks are in a terrific position to be able to move on in the NBA playoffs. But it was the Mavericks who were the aggressors from the outset. Kyrie Irving getting the first bucket of the game, setting the tone for a team that was able to get downhill and shoot a whopping nearly 69% on their 2-point shots in game number 2. And the defense that this team played, particularly against James Harden and Paul George, where they held them to a combined 6 of 25 from the field and just 22 points in Game 5. I had said going into the game in our pregame show on the Dallas Mavericks Radio Network here on this podcast as well, that the Mavericks were going to have to do a terrific job of bottling up the duo of Paul George and James Harden. All the talk and conversation coming into Game 5 was what happened in Game 4, especially in the fourth quarter where the Mavericks, of course, had come back from 31 points down. They were able to take a lead with a couple of minutes left in the game, but Paul George and James Harden were able to get the victory for the Clippers, particularly with James Harden in terms of his floaters, knocking down a bunch of them, especially in the fourth quarter, and Jason Kidd deciding to live with that plan going into Game 5. And boy, was he vindicated for that strategy because, of course, during the regular season, James Harden hit less than 30% on those floaters. He was rendered ineffective in game number 5 because of the defense, particularly of Derrick Jones Jr. What can you say about Jones and the performance that he's had? As I mentioned just a second ago, 4 straight games in double figures. In Game 5, he was able to put together another terrific performance where you saw what he was able to do on both the offensive and defensive end, and especially on the defensive end. You go back to that first quarter where the Mavericks got off to a much better start, which again was another key going into Game 5 that we talked about here on this show and also on the pregame show on the Dallas Mavericks Radio Network, was the start that the Mavericks had to get off in order to give themselves confidence that they could be in the game in Game 5, and they did that, having a 25-24 lead at the end of 1. But Derrick Jones Jr., as I mentioned in this game, 12 points once again, went 2 of 4 from downtown. But his defense in the first quarter, he had 2 blocks on 3-point attempts by James Harden and Paul George, and his ability to use his length and athleticism to be able to guard both of them and be able to block shots on the 3-point area was huge in that first quarter. The Clippers coming into this series were the 6th best team in the NBA, shooting 38% from the 3-point line during the regular season. You saw what they did in Game 4, knocking down 62% of their three-pointers, going 18 of 29. In game number 5, the Clippers were a pathetic 9 of 35 from downtown, 25.7% from 3. And that is thanks to the defense that the Dallas Mavericks and Derrick Jones was playing on the perimeter, not allowing these shooters to get to their spots to be able to knock down shots from distance. And they were absolutely terrific in that area. More on game 5 and the way that Kyrie Irving, Luka Dončić, and Maxi Kleber were able to help this Mavericks team get this win. But before we get there, let's hear from today's sponsor of our video and our podcast, and let's hear from Aura. Today's video is brought to you by Aura. Do a Google search on your name and email address to see how much information comes up about you. I was devastated by the amount of information that I could be seeing searching my name and profile, and I knew then I needed to be protected for not just myself, but also for my family. Data brokers sell your information to scammers, spammers, and anyone else who may want to target you. Your full name, email, home address, health records, your relatives, it's all out there. That's why I've been using Aura, the sponsor of today's video. Aura shows me which data brokers are selling my information and automatically submits opt-out requests for me. Cleaning up my information not only helps reduce the amount of spam I get, but it protects me from hackers who could use this information to help them access my social media accounts, bank accounts, and other sensitive information. Aura also does so much more to protect me and my family from online threats that I can't see. It's really easy to set up, so I don't have to download several different apps to get things like antivirus, VPN, password management, parental controls, identity theft insurance, and more. I get everything at one affordable price. You may already have one of these tools already, but not having Aura is like locking the front door and leaving the back door wide open. Aura is always on, doing the hard work to protect me and my family so I can focus on other tasks with peace of mind. I value my privacy and I value yours. You can go to aura.com/Kevin Gray to start your 2-week free trial. Please see the link in the description. Back here on Inside the Mavs. Thank you for hanging out with us through that break there. And thank you to today's sponsor of our video and our podcast in Aura, as the Mavericks crushed the Clippers by 31-23 to 93 to take a 3-2 series lead going into Friday night's Game 6 back at the American Airlines Center. And it was a complete and total team effort and domination from this Mavericks team. And along the way during postseason runs, you're going to need help from some unsung heroes to be able to provide you games to steal a game or two throughout the course of any playoff series in the NBA. And we got the Maxi Kleber game in game 5. If you remember the game that he had against the Utah Jazz a couple of years ago, where he was bombing away from the three-point line, it was reminiscent of that, especially in the second quarter, where Maxi went 4 of 5 from downtown, scoring 12 points in that second quarter. And he was really able to energize this Mavericks team, particularly with his bench scoring and ability to stretch the floor. If you remember, throughout the course of the regular season, the Mavericks made more corner three-pointers than any team in the NBA. And all 4 of Maxi's three-pointers in that second quarter, 2 on the left corner, 2 on the right corner. And he was absolutely sensational for the Mavericks. During that second quarter, they were able to use a 13-2 run after the Clippers had cut it down to 1 at 43-42 with 4 minutes remaining in that first half to increase the lead back up to 56-44. And a huge part of that, obviously, was Maxi Kleber knocking down 4 3-pointers in that second quarter to help the Mavericks stake them to what will be a 10-point lead at halftime. Even Dante Exum getting into the act got his first bucket of this series got his second bucket of this series in that second quarter, as he was able to knock down a free throw line jumper that initially increased the lead for Mavericks to 27-24. But this is about the supporting cast. Again, we've talked about a lot of different elements going into the series about how the Mavericks are going to have to get after the Clippers in order to try and win this series. And the supporting cast is another element of what this series has been defined by. And you look what happened in game number 5. When you look at the bench scoring, the Mavericks bench outscored the Clippers 52-42, led by Maxi Kleber and what he was able to do from the three-point line. Kleber, of course, with his 15 points in game number 5, all 5 of his made field goals coming from distance, as he went 5 of 7 from downtown. All of those things that we've talked about throughout the course of this series needed to happen in Game 5. Getting off to a better start with the aggressiveness of Kyrie Irving, which I'll touch on here in just a second, because Jason Kidd, I thought, made an excellent point during his post-game press conference about the aggressiveness of Kyrie Irving setting the tone on the offensive end. But you got off to a better start. You were able to knock down three-pointers in key moments when you needed to, especially with Maxi Kleber. And obviously for Luka Dončić being able to get downhill and get to his spots, knocking down shots in the mid-range to really energize this offense. And you got back to the vertical game as well with Derek Lively II, with Derrick Jones Jr. pushing it out in transition. And Kyrie Irving's defense on James Harden this series has been phenomenal, and he took it up to another level in Game 5. But let's stick with Kyrie Irving here for just a second, because we talked about the first half, the Mavericks being able to get out to a 10-point lead. They led 25-24 at the end of one. Kyrie Irving scored the first basket of the game. And while the output in terms of his scoring, especially in the first quarter and in the game itself, where he only finished with 14 points, it was about getting into that action early on and not allowing the game to come to him, but being much more of the aggressor and pushing the boundaries of the game early on to help this Mavericks offense get energized and started. And Jason Kidd, I thought, made a terrific point. I want you to take a listen to him about how he thought about Kyrie Irving and his ability to set the tone offensively for the Mavericks by getting to the bucket and really getting things started for the Mavericks offensively.
I know we talked about Kyrie in the first quarter and him looking to be a little bit more assertive. Just what did his intention to get to the hole and score inside kind of open things up for you offensively?
Yeah, I thought he didn't wait tonight. The points won't show that, but I thought his ability to get in the paint and was aggressive. He was not going to wait for anybody tonight. And I thought his leadership was huge for him and Luka to be able to be aggressive. But normally Kyle will sit back and wait, but he didn't wait tonight, and we're going to need that again on Game 6.
And the Mavericks will continue to need that from Kyrie Irving going into Game 6, not only on the offensive end, but one of the signature moments of this game, picking the pocket of James Harden, going coast to coast, taking it around the back, and then on Norman Powell, driving to the basket and finishing with the lefty finish. That coming in the third quarter, of course, where Kyrie Irving was able to get the and one to put the Mavericks up 62-50 with just under 8 minutes left in that third. His defense that he has been playing on James Harden has been absolutely phenomenal in this series. And I don't know if Kyrie got some kind of personal vendetta against James Harden or what the hell is going on, but he has been hounding James Harden and did so and taking it to another level in Game 5. And his aggressiveness in both offense and defense, setting the tone from a leadership perspective, but also taking the challenge on the defensive end against Harden, especially in Game 5 after what Harden did to them in Game 4, where he and Paul George each had 33 points, I thought was a big, big factor in Game 5 and the way that the Mavericks will continue to have to play going into Game 6, not allowing the Clippers to get into action, but making sure that they are putting the pressure on them to force the issue where the Clippers committed 15 turnovers, the Mavericks scoring 21 points off those 15 turnovers, and you saw that they were able to get out in transition with 15 fast break points. So again, another marker of this series, the defense that the Mavericks continue to play, holding the Clippers yet again to under 100 points in this series. The third time that the Clippers have been held to under 100 points in the first 5 games of this series. Again, just giving you another indication on how well this team has been playing defensively, not just in this series, but backing up what they did during the second half of the year, as we've talked about plenty, when they went in that 16-2 stretch in those 18 games in their most meaningful games down the stretch. They were the number 1 defense in the NBA, and that did not let up in Game 5, where the Mavericks continue to put the pedal to the metal on the defensive end. And for the Mavericks, as you look at what happened, as we mentioned, led by 10 at halftime, going into the third quarter, they were able to increase their lead to 20. They started off that third quarter outscoring the Clippers 17-4. In the middle of that, using a 14-0 run Kyrie Irving, we mentioned with the big steal on James Harden to get the foul and the and one. Luka Dončić hitting a beautiful step-back jumper over Ivica Zubac, and then Luka Dončić getting to the bucket with a righty floater and then the and one as well. That increased the Mavericks lead to 17. But again, talking about Luka Dončić and getting downhill, and what can you say about Dončić and the performance that he had in Game 5? He said prior to the game that he's obviously dealing with the sprained right knee, which is not good for him right now. And in fact, if this was the regular season, Dončić wouldn't be playing in the games that he's playing in right now. That's how bad the injury is for him. Apparently, he's also been sick over the last near week as well, as you heard, dealing with the sniffles and everything else, somewhat affecting his breathing a little bit as he's getting up and down the floor. But yet and still, he put this team on his back offensively, going an efficient 14 of 26, nearly 54% from the field, 35 points, was a plus 28, and still was able to have 10 assists and 7 rebounds in this game. And he was absolutely sensational. And the biggest key for this team, getting Luka Dončić into rhythm downhill and being able to convert in the mid-range, and he was able to do that time and time again in game number 5, which creates the efficiency that we've been accustomed to seeing from Luka Dončić throughout the course of his career, and that's gotten better as his career has gone on, where he's able to take it up and be a 3-level scorer, getting to the rim, finishing close at the basket, knocking down mid-range jumpers, and then his ability to shoot from the three-point line, where that still hasn't come around yet in this series. He was just 2 of 8 from 3 in Game 5, but the efficiency that he created, the matchups that the Mavericks were able to find and exploit, getting him matched up onto Zubac a couple of times like we're accustomed to seeing when the Mavericks and the Clippers get together. Luka Dončić was able to take advantage of that, playing the 39 minutes and scoring the 35 points that he had. And it was something that Jason Kidd had mentioned during the pregame show, which was the idea that the Mavericks were going to have to manage Luka in order to make sure that he was having the ability to not only play the minutes that he needed to, but also get the kind of rest that he needed to in order to play as great as he did. And you give the Mavericks credit. They leaned on Dončić, and Dončić responded with a fantastic basketball game. He played his best defensive game in this series in Game 2, by far his best offensive game all around in Game 5 when the Mavericks needed him most to come up big, and he absolutely did so. And for me, a gutsy performance that just shows you what kind of competitor Luka Dončić is, how much fire that he has in order to win games, and not allowing, whether it be injury or illness, to keep him from leading this team where they needed him offensively with the 35 points that he had and was a plus 28 in the game itself. But for the Mavericks, it was a total team effort based on what they provided. You give credit, we mentioned, with Derrick Jones Jr. and the terrific defense that he continues to play with the 3 blocks that he had, blocking a couple of 3-pointers by Paul George and James Harden. Again, for this team overall, getting the contributions from everyone. Daniel Gafford in this game was a +8. He had 8 points. Obviously, what Luka Dončić and Kyrie Irving were able to do in combining for the 49 points that they had, with Luka leading the way with 35. I thought Derek Lively II was terrific in this game. He was able to have another block shot, win a perfect 5 of 5 from the field. His rim protection, his athleticism, his rim deterrence, he was absolutely sensational for this team. You look at what he's able to do. He had the 12 points, had 7 rebounds as well, and was able to really be a force in the middle defensively for the Mavericks. And you're seeing how much more comfortable Derek Lively is in this series as the series has gone on. One of the big numbers in this series that may go unnoticed is the fact that the Clippers are shooting less than 50% at the rim so far in the series. And you give a lot of credit to what Daniel Gafford has done. I know he struggled at times in this series, but he started to play a little bit better as the series has gone on. But Derek Lively II and his commitment on both the offensive and defensive end, whether it be closing out possessions with defensive rebounds, but also being a shot blocker and a rim protector to really close things down in the middle, and the individual defense that the Mavericks have been playing for the most part in this series, and then being able to allow Derek Lively to clean things up on the back end, has been sensational throughout the course of this series. And he was big once again in game number 5. So I don't want to miss out on the fact that Derek Lively played a terrific basketball game And again, the defensive mindset that the Mavericks have shown throughout the course of the series has them in this position where they are right now. And if they continue that in game number 6, they will have a terrific opportunity to move on in the NBA playoffs. Even Josh Green getting into the act with a corner bank shot three-pointer on an and one was able to knock down the 4-point play for the Mavericks as well. All things were clicking for the Dallas Mavericks in game 5, and what was a stunning result based on the pressure coming into game 5, the way that game 4 ended after that massive comeback, and then seeing the Clippers outscore the Mavericks 12-6 in the final 2 minutes to steal game 5 on the road. But then in game 5, being able to come out with an aggressive mindset based on what they wanted to do offensively. What they wanted to do was run the Clippers off the three-point line. They did that. They didn't allow James Harden to get into offensive rhythm, whether it be in pick-and-roll situation with Ivica Zubac, who, yes, in this game for Zubac was able to have a good offensive game going 7 of 8 from the field and have 15 points, but was a negative 18 when he was on the floor. But the key to this series will continue to be if Kawhi Leonard, obviously, who did not play in game 5 and don't expect to see for the remainder of this series, the defense that the Mavericks will continue to have to play on Paul George and James Harden, taking them away offensively is going to be key. And you saw for the Mavericks defensively as well, make Russell Westbrook take jump shots. Westbrook was just 2 of 11 in game 5 in the 15 minutes that they played. Things got so bad for Ty Lue and the Clippers, they even ran PJ Tucker out there for 10 minutes to try and change the physicality and the mood of the game for the Clippers, but it didn't matter. The Clippers waved the white flag basically halfway through the fourth quarter, knowing that they weren't going to win game 5 and try to preserve something going into game 6. But that is what the Mavericks did that I thought was huge that they can take with them going into game 6. Breaking the will and the spirit of the Los Angeles Clippers and doing so in their own building, but doing so by setting the tone on the defensive end and making enough three-pointers to be able to keep the Clippers defense honest, which was huge in that in that second quarter with Maxi Kleber knocking down the 4 3-pointers that he did. Because again, another key to this series, not only in game 5, but at the course of this 7-game series that we talked about coming in was the Mavericks needed to command the respect of the Clippers defense by knocking down enough three-pointers to be able to have to deal with them in the three-point line. And that's exactly what happened in game 5. The Mavericks going 14 of 39 from the three-point line, 36% from 3, and Maxi Kleber going 5 of 7 from downtown was really the spark that they needed to keep the Clippers at bay and really put the pressure on them. Because when things are being opened up with the ability to knock down threes on the outside, particularly from the corners where the Mavericks have been devastatingly good throughout the course of the season, now that allows everyone, the driving lanes, to be able to get into the interior, whether it be Kyrie Irving finishing in transition, Luka Dončić finishing in the mid-range and getting to his spots. But again, pushing the pace on the Clippers, and that's exactly what the Mavericks were able to do once again. And again, for them, when they are pushing pace, a team in the Mavericks that was top 10 in pace this season, putting the pressure on the Clippers, who like to slow things down and play much more methodical in the half court. When you are able to speed them up, force them the issue in terms of the turnovers. You saw the amount of turnovers that the Clippers had in this game, especially beginning in that third quarter where the Mavericks were able to push the lead to be able to have it at 20 at the end of 3. That is classic Mavericks basketball, at least what we've seen in the course of this season. Pushing the pace on teams, being able to defend as well as they had during the second half of the year and into the playoffs, being able to be within that rebounding margin of error that we constantly talk about when it comes to the Mavericks. One thing that I was disappointed in was the amount of offensive rebounds that the Clippers were able to get. They got 14 offensive rebounds in this game, but you were even in the defensive rebounding department at 31, which means the Clippers only out-rebounded you 45-40 in game 5. Well within the margin of error for the Mavericks to be able to handle a game like this, and they did so in a beautiful way based on the way that they were able to close out possessions, particularly on the defensive end. But pushing pace, putting the pressure on the Clippers, finishing in transition, but most importantly, getting downhill and getting into spots to put the Clippers in a bind and getting into foul trouble. And you saw with Luka Dončić being able to do that time and time again in the course of game 5. Just a flawless performance by a team understanding the moment and the pressure. You give Jason Kidd a lot of credit for sticking to his game plan, as much criticism as he got from me and from others about what he did not do in game 4. Much better, obviously, in game 5. And that's what it comes down to when you get deeper and deeper into series. The execution by your team. Both of these teams know each other extremely well at this point. Which team wants it more, as Tyson Chandler told me the other day when I had a chance to sit down with an exclusive interview with him about who wants it more and who's going to execute in the moments down the stretch. And the Mavericks were that team in game 5 and now set themselves up going into game 6 in front of this raucous home crowd at the American Airlines Center on Friday night, understanding that the formula to winning games against the Clippers is getting off to a good start, setting the tone on both offensive and defense by Kyrie Irving and Luka Dončić, knocking down enough shots from the outside to be able to keep the Clippers at bay and command their respect in terms of their defense, but dealing with James Harden and Paul George and bottling them up. I can't say it again enough. The Mavericks holding Paul George and James Harden to a combined 6 of 25 from the field overall for just 22 points. If you're going to only get 22 points from those two, you're going to win most of the time when you're taking on the Los Angeles Clippers. The question will be, how will the Mavericks handle what I expect to be an early onslaught by the Clippers in this game, because they're obviously going to play desperate when it comes to trying to save their season and stave off elimination to try to get it back to game 7 on Sunday in Los Angeles. But if you're the Mavericks, you know what the formula is. Obviously leaning on your superstar and Luka Dončić, who put together a heroic effort with the 35 points that he did in the 39 minutes that he played on the bad knee, dealing with the illness, and ensuring that you as a defense, whether it be Derrick Jones Jr., PJ Washington, and others, getting after James Harden and Paul George and being able to ensure that you are making things uncomfortable for them in terms of either the step back threes that James Harden likes to take, making those contested opportunities, but also ensuring that you're playing physical with Harden to ensure that he's not getting the kind of easy floaters that you saw in game 4 that really killed the Mavericks down the stretch to lose game 4. That formula, along with the efficiency that they had in their 2-point field goals, again, going nearly 69% from the 2-point range, that is a winning formula for the Mavericks to continue to play well against the Los Angeles Clippers. And again, the others, the supporting cast, the Maxi Kleber game that we got, Maxi going 5 of 7 from downtown with the 15 points. With the second quarter that he had, really turned the energy around for the Mavericks, and they went on to just blow the doors off the Clippers from there. They were up by 20 at the end of the third quarter. They go on to win by 30. Jaden Hardy got in there in the fourth quarter, and he went absolutely berserk, because I want to make sure I mention him, because in that fourth quarter, basically, obviously in garbage time, he went 5 of 8 from the field and scored 14 points in 5 minutes. Jaden Hardy got his shots up, got him in, and got him going late in that fourth quarter when the Mavericks were just simply finishing off the job that they did in handling the Los Angeles Clippers in LA. But a terrific win, a signature win in this series where offense at times has been hard to come by. The Mavericks have played their 2 best offensive games in the last couple, yes, albeit in a loss in game 4, but coming back and absolutely destroying the Clippers in game 5 by 31-23 to 93. Derrick Jones Jr. with his 4th straight game with double figures continues to play a terrific series for this Mavericks team so far, as they'll look to finish it off on Friday night against the Clippers, up 3-2 after beating them down in Tinseltown on Wednesday night. A lot of heroes in this game for the Mavericks, led by their superstar Luka Dončić. But if you're going to win and win deep in the playoffs, the others in your supporting cast have got to show up, and they did so big time against the Clippers in game 5. That'll do it for this episode of Inside the Mavs. Thank you again so much for joining me here on this latest episode of Inside the Mavs. You can download and subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcast for free. Give it a 5-star rating and write a review for it while you're there. You can also find us now on YouTube, Inside the Mavs on YouTube. Just search Inside the Mavs And make sure you subscribe to our Inside the Mavs YouTube channel. And if you're watching this on my primary YouTube channel, at Kevin Gray Sports, like and comment on the video as well. And you can follow me on Twitter at Kevin Gray Sports. I'll have our Mavericks pregame show on the Dallas Mavericks Radio Network on Friday night with tip-off at 8:30 p.m. The pregame show will begin at 8 o'clock as the Mavericks look to close out the Los Angeles Clippers after their 123-93 win in Game 5 to take a 3-2 series lead. It should be an incredible atmosphere at the American Airlines Center on Friday night. My name is Kevin Gray, Dallas Mavericks pre- and post-game host on the Dallas Mavericks Radio Network. This has been Inside the Mavs, presented by Aura. We'll talk to you later. Peace.